Hi, my name is Patrick McCray for Jewel T. Sains Presents, and I'm here once again with,
Alan James Gallant.
and we are here to talk about a sequence of Twilight Zone episodes that are about new beginnings.
Mhm.
And after dealing with Doomsday, we thought this would be an appropriate cycle. And Alan and I had tossed around a number of titles, but because we were slaves to the machine, we decided to let AI pick the episodes. Also, just out of curiosity to see what would be picked.
Mhm.
And this is a very interesting combination. I'm not sure the initial list had any of the ones we had talked about, or it didn't really have many of the ones,
Yeah,
which means
yeah,
that
maybe.
those are still available.
Yeah,
And so we swapped one of them out. We swapped Praise of Pip out because we got a beef with Jack Klugman.
that's,
Um,
except we have him in here for a passage for trumpet. So
that's right. But anyway, um, uh, we took care of that, and so here we are. And I'll say this: we swapped it out for an episode Alan's very fond of, and I'm very fond of. And honestly, we could probably spend an hour just talking about it. So one of the challenges is going to be maybe not letting that happen, or maybe just letting it happen. I don't know,
okay,
one or the other. Which is Night of the Meek
Night of the
with
Meek, which
Art
actually
Carney.
occurred. It was first broadcast 2 days before my first Christmas. I was born in the summer of 1960, and this was in December 23rd, 1960. And I actually never saw this episode until I was well into my 40s. I wasn't even aware of its existence.
Really?
Really.
Should we leave it for last?
We can do that. Sure.
Yeah, because I don't know how long that discussion's going to take. It
Mhm.
may not take long at all, but who knows? Well, then, should we go in production order?
Sure. That would begin with season 1, episode 5, Walking Distance, starring Gig Young, directed by Robert Stevens, written by Serling himself. And Ron Howard has a small role to play in this episode as the Wilcox boy.
Now, walking distance is because there are several that are
Mhm.
almost identical in here.
It's true.
It's very similar to Willoughby, and it's the opposite of the Albert Selmy episode that we did when we were doing the 1 hour
Yes.
pieces. So it is a favorite theme of Rod Serling's, someone in the advertising industry
Traveling into the past.
that takes public transport and winds up in the past.
Mhm. Yep.
And they go in slightly different directions. This one, more happily.
Yes.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But it's about a guy who literally goes back to his own childhood and interacts with his family, who are weirded out, largely at first by the
Particularly
whole
his
thing.
father. Yeah, his father,
Yeah,
primary communicator.
yeah. And Serling's awfully lucky that he grew up at a certain time that had echoes of an earlier time,
Mm-hmm.
and he is able to, like Ray Bradbury, have a fairly direct connection with a period that's worth being nostalgic over.
Yes, yes. Serling grew up and was aware of the goings on by the 1930s. Um, and yeah, he was born in 1925. So by 1933 or something, he was aware of what was going on around him as a child. And so uh, there's a lot of bucolic nostalgia, small town nostalgia that's going on here. And probably a lot of it was, if he didn't directly experience it, he was getting soaked in it from his parents and his grandparents.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There is a lot of dandelion wine
Oh yeah.
floating around here,
Mhm.
and I don't know if there's intellectually as much to say about these episodes as there were about the Doomsday episodes.
No, this is a more emotional trip, I think, in a lot of respects, and
It
it's
is.
something that grabs the audience by the heartstrings in a lot of cases as well.
It's.
Um,
I think it's something everyone can identify with. If they can't, it's something everyone wants to be able to identify with.
Mm-hmm.
I think is the other aspect here.
Yeah.
Uh, I and Serling, is not naturalistic enough to avoid going into linguistic rhapsodies,
Oh yeah. I mean,
and I love that.
it is. It's sort of like it's almost like Shakespeare on supernatural or possible supernatural events. When he starts to really wax poetic about things through the characters of like Oberon or characters like that, and so you get this sort of reflective stuff that's going on. Sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's nonverbal, sometimes it's happening between actors in a moment. But with Gig Young walking off because he's freaked out because he's, again, you talk about, he's like an ad executive and he's under so much pressure and he's flipping
Yeah,
out and he wants to get away from it all. And so he literally walks away from this gas station where his car is being serviced, and he just walks. He knows he's only about a mile and a half away from his old hometown, and he walks up there, and something happens on the journey, and he ends up remarking constantly about, oh, nothing's changed, nothing's changed. And
yeah,
he gets the soda for the 3 scoop soda for a dime and all
yeah.
of this.
That's the time machine.
Yeah,
Is the consumption of the soda.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Walking into that pharmacy or whatever it is, the store, the general store, I guess, and there he is. He's back to when he's like 10 years old in terms
I
of the time frame.
I really envy a culture that had the proximity
Mm-hmm.
of this, where this was a very real kind of possible past
Mm-hmm.
that really was in their memories. I mean, for us going back to the 70s or
It's
if you're
still
the 60s, it's nice, but it's not this.
no. Our childhood is a buzzkill in terms of the death of naivete, the death of simplicity, all of those things that culturally our parents and grandparents experienced at one point in their lives were lost to us because of the Second World War.
Yes.
So that's really the kind of
Oh, the triumph of mass manufacturing.
the separation of those two things, where
Yeah.
it caused a great deal of prosperity, but it also and we got good things out of it too. We got educational sophistication, which was really good, and we got financial prosperity that allowed people to be able to, easily afford homes and cars and vacations and things that are kind of at in peril today because
Uh-huh.
our economic situation has been so up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down over the last 40 years. Um, uh, so yeah, it was a completely different thing.
So it and the thing that we both got and lost, I suppose, we got this industrialized sameness, which meant that I can talk about wacky packages and you can talk about wacky packages, and isn't that
Right,
great? Our childhoods both have wacky packages,
right.
but and that does allow us that connection, but the individualized sense of there was one soda fountain, this
Right.
one place, and that defined part of what our palate and our sense of sweet
Mhm.
became, and we can't share that, but we can share having the memory of it with each other.
Yeah.
We can share it now verbally.
Yeah. Like I
uh
grew up in a rural area where you grew up in more close proximity to
like,
a city.
oh
Um,
yeah,
so I did have some of that stuff like the creek out back and the wood, the cabin in the woods, and some of
the
that
ravine.
sort of bucolic stuff, uh,
Yeah,
and the spooky stories about finding the the skull. Somebody found a skull out in the field. Those weird stories that you
that
hear.
happened.
Oh yeah, yeah, it did. It turned out it was probably a very very old Native American skull.
Oh,
Happened in the anthropologists came in from the University of Maine and blah blah blah, and the cops came in to make sure it wasn't a murder scene or anything like
yeah.
that. But it became this bigger than life story. It became bigger than it actually was among kids at the time, because I was like 12, 13 when that happened.
If Joel were here, we would blame him for it.
Of course.
That poor man. um, but yeah, I Sterling is one. Hi, Joel. Sterling is wonderfully shameless in how he goes for the heart on these things. And again, he does it with language. And to be academic for a moment, I think it's probably what happens when you grow up and Eugene O'Neill is the dramatic rock star
Absolutely.
as you're in college and so on and so forth, you know. And because these are very kind of O'Neill like rhapsodies,
Yes,
these
they are.
characters go into. And I, as I said, I think Rod Serling came from a really magical time in writing where, hardened realism was being pushed through the trumpet of rhapsodic, it's not natural, it's lyricism of romanticism.
Yes. I mean, because you also had Tennessee Williams, you had plays like Picnic, which ostensibly are about that bucolic time, but have a different edge to them in terms of relationships. The Rainmaker,
Yes.
all of these wonderful plays that have an underpinning of something more realistic, but also they're placed in this environment of this earlier time, or this or a feeling of an earlier time.
I was the last voice of that I know of really was Chayefsky.
Patty Chayefsky, yes.
Yeah, who everyone, who started out, oddly enough, doing this very spare realism, and wound up doing the very lyrical, expressionistic take on language and on character, where these characters have these long monologues justifying themselves in language no one uses.
He was a writer that enjoyed writing, and he had to seek out that style, I think, ultimately, even though in his life and in his talking about his craft, he remained very practical and very realistic and so on.
So Stop at Willoughby, I think, is kind of the dark twin.
It is. It absolutely is. And that's the next one to talk about, because that was the episode 30 of the first season. And that's James Daly, who went on to star in Medical Center.
Yes.
Television.
Yeah, Chad Everett, right? Yep, he was Chad Everett's boss. Yep. Yeah. And this is one where he never really gets to spend much time in the town compared to Gig Young. But boy, he winds up there permanently. This was a favorite story of my mother's, and I was fond of that idea until I watched it again.
I was about to say, your mother had sort of a morbid fondness for this kind of storytelling, or
here's the weird thing is she didn't.
No,
but she was staunchly anti-suicide and so on and so forth.
Right.
And this is I'm going to say something. Hopefully you'll tell me I'm wrong. And maybe you won't. But occasionally I see episodes of shows that are so dark, I can't believe what the message is when I walk away from the message. The TV show The Good Place looked as if it were ending in a really happy manner. But no, that's not what was being said.
Right.
And this
is the
same thing. It's a pro-suicide.
It's very dark. Your mother, you were raised Catholic, correct?
No, but she converted to Catholicism at a certain point, and then earlier than that, I was sentenced to 2 years at Catholic school.
Okay,
but I was already an atheist, so but I had that.
You had some of that milieu. I'm thinking that your mother may have just skipped past the dark message right into the ultimate reward, and that's what she liked about it.
Yeah,
It does
I think
have
it
that
was.
layer. That's a layer to it. Ultimately, he steps out of the train. He's killed. You don't know that till the end. He steps off the train. In his mind, he's in Willoughby, where he wants to be, and everything's wonderful and fine. And it's 1926 or 1905 or whatever it is. I guess it's in the aughts. And it's where he wants to be. It's his paradise.
And he has suffered. He
He
has
has
suffered
suffered.
enough. He really
Yes.
has. By being a reasonable man surrounded
Right.
by an unreasonable present.
Push, push, push.
Push, 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 Williams. Push, push, push.
That's right. Man,
I
that would
don't know
drive
if that
me
was. I think
crazy.
that was. I think that was part of some syndicated ad for the Twilight Zone
Mhm.
that different stations would carry for a while. It's
Yeah.
push, push, push. I remember that distinctly.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
it's also a typical stereotype of the feckless manager boss character who's just a total tyrant, and lives
certainly
for
Reek had
nothing but to crush the will of
no.
charges.
Oh, that's all. That figure is all over
Hmm.
this. That ultimate corporation man boss. Sterling especially had it in for the advertising industry.
Yeah, he didn't like authority particularly, and I think he even liked less the authority of finance and big business.
Yeah.
But yes, he
Um.
doesn't. I think he saw the mendacity in the ad business, because the ad business was such a dominant force in his life, being a
Yes, it was.
television producer and writer and all of these things. And I think he definitely resented it. There's no doubt about
Well,
that.
he got that out of his system here, and probably enjoyed the fact that they had to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this
Um.
critique is brought to you by.
Well, but then you've got who is it, Asher, who makes the ad business kind of the butt of the joke in Bewitched
Yes,
over and over again. So
yes.
this ad business thing comes up a lot
It
among TV
does, and I think
producers.
it's because there's a natural loggerhead between the sponsorship and the ad campaigns and the creative influence of writers, producers, actors, and all of that sort of thing.
I remember on Babylon 5 in the earliest days, one of the most successful shot down suggestions I had is that we try to involve real life corporations in having a corporate life on the station,
Right.
so the AT&T logo might show up on the Babcom system or things like that.
I bet
And
they
of course, I was
visual
just ripping.
legal dancing in their head though when you suggest
Well,
that.
yeah, and Straczynski, rightly said. They said, well, yeah, but what if we have MTI as a sponsor or something like
Right.
that?
Right.
That really eliminates that. And I thought, okay, yeah, you're right. You can get away with that if you're making Blade Runner.
Sure.
You
Because you
know,
don't have that kind of sponsorship presence. You
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 don't, you don't.
you
I mean,
can
they
you
might.
can actually get the company to pay for product placement in
That's
film.
right. That's right. But TV is a different animal. I think it's an interesting idea. But then, given the revolutionary nature of what happens on the Babylon station, suddenly you're putting those corporations in a very political place.
Yes, you are. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in a show that played a lot with who's the good guy, who's the bad guy this week, and of
Right.
making
And
it go back and forth, it doesn't matter if by season 5 AT&T comes out as the good guy.
yeah,
They've had 3 seasons of being purposely misinterpreted as the bad guy, and so on.
right.
It
Right.
becomes a whole Megillah,
Yes.
because that would have presumed people were watching.
Yeah.
But that's neither
Well,
here
they
nor there.
were. They were. It was just,
They-
it was, Babylon 5 came out in a transitional phase of how media was treating, television too, because we were going into cable and streaming was not
oh,
far behind. These things were happening and audience shares were getting smaller. You could still be successful with a smaller audience share.
for
Obviously,
all
Babylon 5 has a great following. It has a very devoted following.
for all of my ragging on it, uh, it is the hand that fed me for a
Mm-hmm.
while,
Mm-hmm.
and B, I'm very proud of it. It took me a long time to get to that point,
Yeah.
and so I think my take on Babylon 5, because I was so critical of it for a while, is worth more than other people's, because
You were there.
I was
Yeah.
there, and and I was brave enough to not like a lot of what was going on, and so I had to come about my opinion honestly,
Hmm.
and come about my opinion. Uh, Basically, the show itself had to overcome my negative opinion that I got while being part of the show itself.
Sure.
Small part, but
Uh, I think Serling probably had some of the same troubles, the struggles of operation, of operating within that world, within the compromises or the directions that people wanted to go, and resisting that. There's a lot of that,
now just to jump ahead a little bit, on Babylon 5, there's a character named Corwin
Yes.
for the same reason that Serling had a character
Right.
named Corwin.
Right.
So we'll get to that. All right. Well, what's next?
All right, so our final first season episode is A Passage for Trumpet. That's episode 32. It was Don Medford, who was mostly a television director. He directed a lot of episodes of Dynasty, of all things, and
Okay.
but he was also well known for the final two-part Fugitive in 1967.
Oh, wow.
He directed that, which was a groundbreaking piece at the time for dramatic television. It was quite well done.
There are elements of this episode, even having rewatched it the other day, that I remember very clearly. All of this great camera work with the mirror.
Yes.
Really staying in one shot occasionally and having the mirror be a mirror, and you can see the reflection, having the mirror not be a mirror, and you have the girl on the other side with the glass very carefully coordinated.
Yeah.
The stuff at the pawn shop, the ghost business. Remind me how this thing ends, because I get that's the part that I don't remember.
It ends well. Klugman runs into a fellow who's playing trumpet who sees him.
Yeah. He claims to be Gabriel.
And it's Gabriel.
Yeah.
And John Anderson, who fabulous character actor, appeared on seems like 1,000 television shows during that time. Very sort of raw-boned looking guy. He played Lincoln in a couple of things.
Okay.
That kind of a guy. And he tells him he's not dead.
That they're all ghosts.
That they're all ghosts. And he says, you have a choice. You stepped out in front of the thing, but right now you're between worlds. Which one do you want to choose? And he chooses life.
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, he comes back. He turns out that he's just been brushed by the pump bus.
Yeah.
And he gets up and he
Isn't there a girl?
What's that? Yes, he does.
He meets a girl.
Episode, but first he gets $25 from the bus driver, who says, "Please, buddy, don't."
Yeah, don't bring this up. I got a good record.
Bring this up to the cops, And so he gives him $25.
Yeah, you're right.
The pawn guy, the pawn shop broker, it has jacked the price up from the $8.50 he gave him to $25. So he takes $25 and goes in and buys his horn back. And then
that's at the beginning of the episode that he sees that.
No, what he does is he pawns the trumpet.
He pawns it, but he's in the window and he sees him put the $25 thing. And he's like, "Come on, guy."
Kind of PO'd about it because it's like, you just tripled the price of the darn thing. I couldn't buy it back if I wanted to now,
we have an evil used bookstore in Knoxville.
Yeah.
That buys stuff from people, and they do that all the time.
By the pound and then charge.
You'll get nothing. You'll get nothing for it, and then you'll be astounded at what they're asking.
Yeah. Some people do that crap because they don't really want to sell things too. They want to just keep shit.
Well, they don't. This is a big business.
They really do want
big. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you feel great about yourself.
Oh, doesn't it though?
When you have to go sell something there.
Yes.
And you see what they do. I once got my revenge, but it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. They bought a crystal ball from me, and they paid me a lot. It felt like $300. I couldn't believe it. But then they were selling it for like $850 or something, and I thought those. Right. And it wouldn't sell.
Right.
And I got to watch them lower the price.
Right.
More and more and more until it sold for less than they bought it from me for.
What?
And that was just such a spiritual victory.
That's awesome.
I felt great.
My crystal ball is not probably of that highest quality, but it's quite beautiful actually. It only cost
It's
me
very nice.
$50.
Oh,
So
good,
yeah,
good.
there it is behind me there, right there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the right size. I bought it because of its similarity to the size of the one that Magda or David used in Dark Shadows. So
Sure,
you know.
sure. Yeah, I have one around here somewhere. It's my mother's, and
Mhm.
that one doesn't go.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
that one
absolutely
stays.
not.
That
Absolutely
one
not.
stays.
Yeah.
It's important though, if you have a crystal ball, make sure you put it in a window facing either east or west. Keep that window open and never cover it. No, no, no. I'm kidding. Do the opposite. You'll burn your house down.
I
Um,
was gonna say that goes from scrying to crying, doesn't
the
it?
worst advice.
Light the
Yeah.
fire.
Really, Klugman. Klugman is who sells that. I mean,
He's an everyman. This is Klugman at his best, playing the everyman who's got a lot of raw emotional stuff going on in his life. He's brilliant at this sort of thing. The What was the story? There's a story about him and how he got into The Odd Couple, and apparently he did do the stage version, and he was a replacement for Mathau.
okay.
And whoever was producing the television series basically called him and said, "You want to do it?" And he says, "Oh, you must have seen me. Replacing Mathau. You must have." He said, "No, no, no." He says, "Well, why are you just like having me come in for an interview and then just giving it to me?" And he said, "I saw you in Gypsy, and I watched Merman spitting all over you, and you never flinched." I said, "That's an actor."
Yeah.
So weird things. Weird.
I saw a cow come in the room.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great. He would come into Louisville occasionally. I think my mother would run into him.
Oh, cool.
And because she was friends with lawyers of that age, and
Mhm.
lawyers of that age like to buy parts of horses.
Sure.
And Klugman had at least one horse. I think it was Quincy's Dream
Mm-hmm.
that he was running. I think one year one of his horses was in the Derby. So I never found out more, except I never got to meet him. And I was
Right.
so mad because this was when he was at his Quincy kind of high point.
In the 80s. Yeah.
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 Yeah. For Dark Shadows fans who are trivia mavens, Ron Barry, who interviewed the Dark Shadow stars back in the 60s, was actually I believe, the cousin or nephew of Jack Klugman, because Ron Barry's last name was Klugman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, moving on.
Yes.
What do we have? What do we have next?
The next episode is from season 2. It's the only one from season 2. It's The Night of the Meek. You want to skip it over? Yep. And go on to season 3. Okay, we're going to season 3, and we're going to start. We have 2 episodes from season 3. We'll start with The Hunt, which is season 3, episode 19. This is the only episode that's not written by Rod Serling. It's written by Earl Hamner Jr. of the Waltons fame.
Well, that makes sense. That makes all the sense in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because of the rural lyricism.
Yes, absolutely. Arthur Honeycutt stars in it with Jeanette Nolan, and of course, the dog is also one of the stars in it. So, for those of you who don't know, Arthur Honeycutt was a great character actor who appeared in what seems like hundreds of films and television shows over the years, from probably the 1940s, maybe even the late 30s, through up including the 1960s, and played a lot of rural type characters, what might have been referred to at the time as hillbilly characters, Appalachian mountain people, that sort of thing. He was very good at that. He had a kind of laconic, very slow-paced sort of a rural wisdom kind of thing going on.
There's a specific type of chiseled feature too, and I can't describe it, but it's
and he had the beard and the whole 9 yards, and that was his That was his ticket. Jeanette Nolan is also in this. At this point, they're both in their late 40s, and they, of course, look much older. They're supposed to be in there like they're around 70 years old.
Yeah.
And of course, in that particular, again, we're talking about an earlier time here, obviously, and people looked much older.
They did.
Now, typically in their 70s. So Jeanette Nolan had a long career as well. She started in the 30s as a young woman. Most people my age remember her as Dirty Sally in a television series that started with a guest appearance on Gunsmoke. She took her false teeth out, and she played this character, Dirty Sally, who just kind of, made her way around the West and made her living the best she could, selling junk and doing stuff like that. And she's quite wonderful in this, as is Arthur Honeycutt. It's great. The
Another afterlife
it is
oriented.
it's a reward, afterlife reward, with a little bit of drama thrown in. When he first arrives there, he thinks he's talking to St. Peter. It turns out he's talking to Lucifer.
Yeah.
And this other guy comes along and tells him, "No, you can bring your dog in. Come on, come with me."
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's no heaven without being able to bring your pet.
It's a loyalty test, and it's also, I think that Hamner's probably had a great fondness for dogs and thought they deserved to be in heaven. There was one. And this was a great sort of character test for Arthur Honeycutt's character, and he passes it with flying colors. I ain't going no. He's very simplistic. He's a naïve in some ways, and in other ways he's very wise.
We call that straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very much so. Rock solid kind of stuff. And he comes through with flying colors. He's loyal to his dog as his dog is to him. So the whole thing is trying to figure out that he's dead is so much fun in this. The way it's written, and the way he just sort of assumes things. Like, he comes to the grave diggers, and they're digging the grave for the dog. He doesn't know the dog's in there. It's just a box. They sort of mention offhandedly that this is what's going on. But they're not talking to him. They're not paying any attention to him because they're alive. He's dead. And he makes this logical, like, well, I can understand why they wouldn't talk to me. They're just so overcome with grief, and all this sort of thing that's going on. And it's quite cleverly done. And because this guy accepts things at face value in a lot of ways, it works. It works really well. And then when he finally realizes that I am dead, it's, oh, okay. I think I can accept that. I can't accept the fact that you're not going to let the dog in with me. I'm not going to go in there.
Yeah.
But so again, it's just sort of like face value. There it is. Finally, you understand. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Really nice, understated performance that way, I think.
It is. Yeah. It is. What follows this? Because I have a feeling.
Let's see. Now that was number 19 in the third season. Number 37 of the third season is The Changing of the Guard, one of my all-time favorite episodes.
Now, how many episodes have we done? We talked about at least 4.
This is the 5th episode we've done today.
So, wow.
And we're going to do the 6th, which is The Night of the Meek. And now, do you want to do The Night of the Meek by itself later? Or you want to do it now?
Oh, do you want to do The Night of the Meek by, like, in another episode?
We could.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And my suggestion is, let's both look at the Richard Mulligan version, also just for the hell of it.
Sure.
So that we can split that up.
Sure.
Because I don't need to collapse into tears twice in an episode, in one of these episodes, and
right.
It might happen in talking about Changing the Guard.
Right.
Oh my God. The thing about this, it always affected me because Donald Pleasance is so good. And
we're teachers too. That has something.
Well, I was about to say that's when I was a kid.
Yeah. Okay.
And when I was beginning teaching, it affected me.
Yes.
But now that I've been doing it for 26 years, which is half of the time of Donald Pleasance as a character.
Right. Right. He's a 50-year
and
guy. Yeah.
and that it it God bless it, because yes, it has a lot of sentiment. No, you affected us, teach, and so on and so forth. But it also tells the truth about these moments that I went on and on about this stuff that I cared about, and they
Hmm.
just bloody well didn't.
Right.
And the behavior of the students in their polite boredom,
Hmm.
uh, sure.
Yeah.
I had the day I watched this, I had just dealt with uh, a, a a gentleman in one of my classes who had a very negative opinion of one of the texts that we were exploring. But we hadn't even gotten to the end of it. And if I don't want to go into detail about it, but if I told you what the text was, you would be shocked
No. Yeah.
that this person had
So
a
this
negative
person had a
opinion.
negative attitude towards it. Yeah.
And it was such a negative attitude. We were entering into the last part of it, and I realized that he and I really had locked horns on it. And what bothered me so much was that the discussion, he and I locking horns of it, was going to be the flavor that the kids were going to go into the
Sure.
last part of this text with.
Sure. Sure.
And it was like, but dealing with that, my God, is any of this worth it? Kind of
Hmm.
thing. Uh, and then to come home and put this on, which I hadn't seen in decades,
Right.
was unbelievably powerful, because you always hear about when somebody doesn't like something.
Right.
You don't often hear about when someone does, and they never contact administrators.
Right.
Occasionally you get the joy of the 15 years later letter, but it's like, send it to my boss, kid. Send it to my boss.
Nice.
Um.
Triplicate, please.
Yeah. Not that we're ungrateful for it, but
No.
um. But this told a lot of truths. The obvious truths being, hey, this is a sweet guy. Hey, he's a little out of touch. Hey, he actually influenced these other kids.
Right. That he had great value in the
And I
life.
like those.
Yep.
But it's the other truths that it goes into. The gun on the desk.
Hmm.
Well, of course, this is his backup plan.
In coming to terms with mortality in general.
And with the questionable utility of what he had been doing.
Hmm.
That you do question that, because a lot
Times
of people make you
times
question that.
change, educational techniques change, all of these things. And he even mentions that at the end of the thing when he decides it's okay to retire. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So that's my hot take on this.
Hmm.
For
Yeah, I think
you,
it's an incredible performance. Donald Pleasance is in his 30s, I think, at this point. And he's playing a man who is 65, 70.
required no makeup.
You know,
I think Donald Pleasant's always looked like that.
he didn't have to worry about, well, he'd always been bald like that, I think, ever
Yeah.
since he was, 25 or something. But, so minimum of makeup was really required. Graying of what hair he had left, and a little bit of mottling of the skin, and all that sort of thing. And you're done. But yeah, another great Serling masterpiece. Um, it's heartbreaking in its optimism at the end. It really is. It's like, but it's also life affirming. It's
It's
got so many layers to it. It's and I don't think a lesser actor could have made that come home the way that.
no. I mean, I there's not another actor I would want to see in this.
Mhm.
Eh, Maybe Roddy McDowell.
Yeah,
I
give
think Roddy would have
the
really
range that
done.
we discovered in him in later years. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I
yeah,
think at the point that this came out, he was still doing Camelot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But I think an older Roddy would
yeah.
have just uh,
Yeah.
taken this to the same level
Yeah.
of other level
I agree.
that Donald plays.
I agree. I
But
agree.
it's again just the celebration of heightened language and sentiment, and it takes on the past that need to be rediscovered,
Yes.
uh, and that that the past does matter. The past does have meaning, and its ultimate meaning is what of it we can bring into the present.
Mm-hmm. One of the great lines in this movie, and I'm just paraphrasing it, but before the Christmas break, his board class is sitting there, and he's getting ready to let them go. And he says something like, I don't think I've ever had a class of absolute dullards like you guys.
Dunderheads. Dunderheads.
But I really, hopefully you've taken something from this, and I really wish you well, and I hope you have a wonderful
He
Christmas.
says something like, "But you're dunderheads who have a tremendous potential and a
Yes.
tremendous future."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's great because you can tell he has an edge
Yes.
that he does use in his classes.
Yes.
And it's affectionate, and that is so well articulated here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's yeah. Yeah, I had the same thing about this. I had the same reaction when I first saw The Night of the Meek in my 40s, and I said, "Wow, how did I miss this?" With Arcani, the Arcani.
Yeah. Night of the Meek has been a companion of mine my whole life. And I go back and revisit it every once in a while. And as I said right now, I am cohabitating with someone who is the spirit of Christmas, but can't stand the holiday.
Right.
And so it's a very interesting bit of chemistry.
Yeah.
And but that has made me more aware of my own relationship with Christmas. But we can't talk about this because we're going to talk about it maybe tomorrow.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. All right. Will you have anything else to say about these?
I think that we've covered the duality of traveling to the past. We've looked at coming to terms with mortality. We've looked at the reward system of an afterlife in certain ways, darker than other ways.
Yeah,
but we have seen a great deal of redemption, I guess.
In the past, I don't know how well we handled duality, but we have looked at life from both sides now.
Absolutely.
I'm Patrick McCray.
I'm Alan Gallant.
Good night.
Good evening.